Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. It is a Monday night. I know these faces may look a little furrier than the last time you would have seen us. Well, some of us. But we're back. It is the night after Super Bowl. Everybody's gone into hibernation for the off season because we are out of football for 6 months. But we're going to help you. We're going to take care of you. We're here to snuggle up alongside you. We'll be your big spoon for the next 6 months and help you with some fantasy football. As always, I'm back with
Paul
my
wants to
main
be a
Monday
little
night
spoon.
partners. Good times are going to be had by all. But first and foremost, before we get to all that, don't forget, check out rookiedraftguide.com. We're working hard on rookie content. As I was told pre-show, we should be working on that right now, but we're taking a break because we love you guys. We miss you guys. I appreciate already people on YouTube already starting to chat. I like it. But first, after that, Craig, Paul, how we doing, man?
You go first.
I'm doing all right. Took a few days off of work, so I'm getting stuff done, helping the kids with homework. That's never ending, but it's good to be back here discussing football after sort of a dud of a Super Bowl with just some nice plays, but overall not a whole lot of excitement as we've had. It seems like there's no in between lately with Super Bowls. It's either very exciting or just complete dud. But glad to be back with you guys. Paul, how are you doing?
I mean, it's Monday. Work sucks. Work always sucks. But, it's the off season. I'm split between I don't want to see this for 3 months and I'm excited to dig into college prospects that you have to look at and get a view of them. It's always a split decision.
It is. And on the Craig point, your boy Winfield was showing up in a big way, whether he was getting penalties called against him for throwing up the deuces or trying to tip balls where he basically just fingertipped it. I mean, he at least had made a name for himself in the Super Bowl. I don't necessarily know how great it was, but it was good to see him get involved.
His name was already made for him by his dad, but he was living up to it in the big show. And I'll tell you, for the first penalty of your NFL career to have it be for that against Tyreek Hill, that'll get you noticed.
It was pretty hilarious, but I mean it's and I don't want to dwell too much on the Super Bowl because that's not what we're talking about tonight. But it was fun from a defensive perspective to see that Kansas City's because everyone makes them out to be such like this immovable force, and Tampa's defense, which isn't perfect. I mean, there are plenty of questionable players on that defense, just snuffed them out. I mean, from a defensive side of things, on an IDP show, it was exciting to see, Shaq Barrett just continue to make havoc in the backfield, and Pierre-Paul coming out and doing some things, and Sue getting involved.
Yeah, you were watching.
I did.
Sue,
I had my
Sue.
I had my Sue jersey on during the game. That was the first time I wore it since probably him leaving Detroit. It's literally the only skin in the game I had, other than being Michigan man with Tom Brady. So, but Winfield, I thought of you as soon as Winfield started doing stuff. Then you posted in the Discord community about it. So it was pretty cool. I'm glad to see some of the rookies stepping up and doing some things. I mean, Devin White continues to look amazing.
He's
No matter
amazing,
what the
yeah.
situation, it's never too big for him. He's ridiculously good.
Yes.
So, with that being said, tonight we're here to not only knock the rust off the live streaming tires. We're going to answer your questions if you guys got questions. As always, feel free to throw them in the chats, and we will jump on them accordingly. But tonight we're just going to talk about some guys that maybe you can target in the off season. From my perspective, I'm looking at guys that have already been moved in trades since the season ended, as guys I want to target. But, I threw it out to the team and said, listen, who are guys you want to buy this offseason? So we're going to throw around some names. We're going to have a little fun with it tonight and banter. I'm sure there'll be some special comments about special players in this show. But, it'll be like old times all over again. So I will let Craig get us started first, though. Who is the first guy you're targeting this offseason?
Oh boy, making me go first. I'm going to go by position group just to make it a little bit easier. Um, I'm going to go to defensive end here first. The two names I had down were Leonard Williams and Sam Hubbard for two different reasons. I had Leonard Williams down preseason last year, and he finally showed up. You know, he'd been getting a lot of that pressure throughout his career, just not making it equate to most leagues fantasy relevant stats. And this year, he showed up and he produced with that system in the Giants, and they like him. I think he likes where he's at. So those other players along the defensive line work well with him. You know, Tomlinson had another good year too as far as the defensive tackle, but I think he's going to continue to show up there. And then the other guy is, you know, for a different reason. Sam Hubbard regressed, but I think that defense as a whole just regressed. He was injured. I think there's a number of different factors, along with it just being a weird year. He was a name that a lot of us were looking to break out in 2020. Clearly didn't happen, but I think you might be able to get him at a discount, and he's still, you know, top 15 guy at the position, I think, pretty much across the board. So if you can get him at a little bit of a discount, I think with that team hopefully improving a bit, especially on the defensive side this year, besides protecting Joe Burrow, which obviously is probably the number one need for the team. Defensive help is something that they need. So I like if you can get him at a little bit of a discount. I like Hubbard. How do you feel about those guys, Paul?
Yeah, Hubbard, I'm 100% behind you. I don't know how many quality third and long snaps he saw. I think once they do get a healthy Burrow, that he's going to see more sack chances. I'm 100% behind you on that one. Williams, I'm not sure. It just he plays inside, and if this is not a tackle specific league, then throw this out. But or if you play a defensive line league, listen. If you play tackle specific, anything I say after this does not matter. But I don't know how many sacks I see for him, and he plays inside. Um, he has shown it. I just don't know about the ceiling for him. Um, but like I said, I'm 100% behind you on the Hubbard selection
Yeah,
there.
and I think from Leonard Williams' perspective, you know, he finished in the top 10 at the defensive end position, depending on how the scoring looked. I think you can get him for a fairly cheap price just because people are sleeping on the
Yeah.
Giants. So I think that's a perfect opportunity to buy, especially if you need, you know, some depth that could become kind of a weekly starter, which, you know, in theory, he was a weekly starter this last year in most weeks. There were a few down weeks, but Williams is a guy that I'd be perfectly fine with buying. I mean, my guys are guys that are a little bit more questionable, but have big, you know, some big potential. Where your guys, I think, are have shown consistency, but there are question marks in other situations. So with Hubbard, you know, the team is a question as a whole. So if they can continue to get guys healthy, Hubbard gets better opportunities and there are more quality snaps and things like that. Leonard Williams, I I still don't know what the Giants as a team are trying to do direction wise. Like their defense is pleasantly surprising. I mean, we all obviously have shown our Jabril Peppers love over the last year or so, and they have some pieces on the line and in the secondary, Julian Love and some Brad Berry and some of these guys. But I just don't know the direction of the team. It seems like they don't. There's just some offensive concerns I have that could cause them to have trouble on the defensive side, but I still think Williams is a perfect buy because of that. He'll be on the field a lot and see a lot of quality snaps there too. Um, I want to throw out one of my name, but I kind of looked at it as the edge position more because I'm been so much in flea flicker mode because I like flea flicker in the edge position. So both of my guys are defense. Well, one's a defensive end and one I think played about as much linebacker as kind of edge. But my two are Montez Sweat from Washington. And Montez Sweat, I don't know that we've really seen the full potential, but with Chase Young and so much attention being paid to him, Montez Sweat's talent and his athletic ability and his ability to get to the quarterback is not far underneath Young to where I think you can get good value out of him for what you'll pay to get him, which is right now I saw him go. I probably should have pulled it up, but I saw him go in a league trade a week and a half ago for like a late third. I think it was a late third round pick. That was it. Just a late third for a guy that needed defensive end help. And then Hassan Reddick from Arizona, like I thought he was kind of a dumpster fire bust kind of guy. Last year, from the edge position, really showed up pretty well. You know, got a lot more use. The question for him is he's more of a he's about to be a free agent, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't think they picked up his option. So if he doesn't go back to Arizona, he's probably a waste of a buy. I think Arizona did a good job using him and utilizing him, and he's a guy that I'm interested in for nothing. Like if I could get him for a fourth round pick, something late or whatever, I would give it a try and see if you get a return to 2020 type production, then it's certainly worth buying. But my guys are more long shot type questionable guys that you can get for super cheap. Paul, thoughts, comments, concerns?
I'm behind you on Reddick. It's a how free is he? If it's free or next to it, yes. And I'm sorry,
Montez
who was the
Sweat.
other name you
Sweat.
mentioned?
Yeah.
Montez Sweat. I think that Sweat is young enough that I don't think that he's free anymore. I don't know if a late third is over or under paying with. I mean, is it a super flex? Is it not? But I think that's probably about the cheapest that you'll see him, depending on scoring. If league mates are not savvy, I'm 100% behind that. If they're savvy, the price might be more expensive than you want. So, I mean, I'm behind you, but yeah,
Right.
it is what it is. That being said, I'm going to name some guys who are expensive here and be right there with you as well. Craig, did you have any thoughts on those guys?
I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you can get Reddick for free, completely free, that's fine. But he hasn't shown a whole lot to this point. With being a free agent, I don't want to be investing a lot in him before I know where he's going to go. If he returns to the Cardinals and it looks like he's going to start, I'd feel a lot more comfortable than going into an unknown situation. And I kind of agree with Paul. And I think it's sort of a Chase Young effect in terms of Montez Sweat, where, the old saying is, high tide raises all ships, which isn't true. If your anchor isn't long enough, you're going to end up sinking, but that's besides the point. Chase Young there, and the attention that is paid to him elevates the ability of those other guys, even if you're talking about defensive tackles specific, like Payne or Allen. Those guys are, talents in and of themselves, but then having someone like Young that has to be paid attention to, all of those guys are going to produce. But I think that's generally kind of known in the fantasy community, so the guys probably have a higher value after this year than they did, last year, even before going into the season, and really knowing for a certainty, yeah, Chase Young is going to be that good right off the bat, and you're going to have to contend with him along with these other, 3 first-round picks along that line. I think all of them were right around there. So I liked it, but again, how cheap is he? I think it's going to be really league dependent.
Absolutely. All right, who'd you got, Paul?
Josh Allen of the Jaguars and either one of the injured Bosas. I'll start with the obvious one first with the Bosas. It's what the floor is on them. If you can have and you can sneak a hey, they were hurt through to somebody in a trade, awesome. If they're savvy and they realize that it's next season already, well, okay, you shot your shot and you missed. Allen on the other side, he's probably has as much natural talent as any defensive end in football, and he got hurt, and he played for the team that picks first. That means you didn't have a lot of sack chances, and I'm the guy sitting here saying sell Fabio in Superflex leagues, but he's much better than what they've had, and they'll actually stay on the field on offense. Also, the fact that they essentially didn't have a receiver that was consistent, but they had Robinson being consistent as a free agent. I don't know if I see the split happening that they just grind out the clock and that he doesn't see the field again. This is basically the worst scenario he can ask for. And I think that there's a noticeable price that he's at versus where he was at before the season. So he would be someone I'd be asking for in league.
Yeah, I remember writing an article on Josh Allen last summer, maybe, over on Roto Heat, and I'm a huge fan. He's one of my favorite defensive ends in football just because of that natural ability. It's just terrible that he's kind of being wasted on a team that was in trouble. But and this all depends on how you feel about Urban Meyer. Maybe they turn the corner now. Maybe Urban Meyer knows how to draft and how to build this team and fix it. I am not sitting on the super excited side of things, but we'll see what happens. But I can't argue with any of the players you're naming off because they're all elite defensive ends in fantasy as well as in the NFL. When healthy, they're all top end talent. So, Craig, anything you want to add one way or the other?
Not a whole lot other than out of the three, Joey Bosa scares me the most. Anytime you're getting into multiple concussions or neck stuff for other players, you have a higher, I think, risk of having that pop up again when you've had someone have a couple in the season or the past couple seasons. So he's the one I'd be most wary of. But again, like you said, if they're all healthy, they all have number one DE in a given year potential.
So we're going to bounce now from defensive end to cornerback because we have a question from YouTube that I want to throw out here, and that'll lead us into our corners. Are stocks up on Byron Murphy now that Patrick Peterson is going to get released? So I'll give you a second to think about it. Obviously, that gives us some news that we didn't mention, but they are leaking out now. There are reports that Patrick Peterson's done in Arizona, which is not surprising. I mean, the team is trying to change and develop and grow, and Peterson's probably just a little too expensive, and they've got some young guys they may like.
He got slow.
Age is catching up a little bit. So that being said, is Byron Murphy stock up now that he's probably going to be the number one corner and he's going to have to cover, the top guy on a regular basis? Although thinking about the way Arizona deploys their guys, I think they stay on one side of the field. I don't think they have them move around, do they?
I don't know. Murphy's interesting because he was so elite his first year. And then his second year and third year, just not. If he can be had for free, sure. I'd be more interested in the guy that they draft in the second, draft in the third versus him. But he might be free 99 also.
Yeah, Murphy's got a ton of talent. Coming out, he was one of the top corners, but he was hiding behind Patrick Peterson and taking on the number two guys, and that's a tough one. Craig, what do you think?
I'm going to want to see what else they do because, like you said, there's a big gap there in their cornerbacks right now. You have Murphy. It looks like Alford might be the only other one they have under contract right now because Drake Kirkpatrick had played quite a bit and got nice stats for you in fantasy, but he's getting up there, and he's a free agent too. So, I have to imagine that division that they're in, especially with a guy like Stafford coming in, who's going to open up that Rams offense. I think, Brad, I'm sure you have opinions on that, but he's a lot better at throwing the deep ball than Goff, and that's something you're going to have to contend with in that division now. And you already have Lockett and Metcalf there. We're going to have to see what happens, but will he be the number one guy? Yeah, he's got the talent. I want to see how it plays out, and I wouldn't go investing a lot in him. If it ends up being something like Murphy and Alford, I'd rather go pick up Alford for free, someone that's probably going to get picked on and probably get you better fantasy stats. So real life versus fantasy, Murphy's probably better real life. I don't know that we're going to really have a dispute on that, but Alford, again, might be better for you fantasy wise.
Yeah, fantasy wise, I would expect by the start of this season that we see a drastic change in this cornerback room. I mean, Jonathan Joseph, Patrick Peterson, Drake Patrick. I mean, there's just, man, that 5 years ago that might have been an exciting cornerback room, but right now, no, no, not at all. So I would, if you're looking to trade for Byron Murphy, now's probably the time to maybe take a shot if you really wanted to stash him. But with the rookie class that's coming out, with some of these second year guys, I'm going to throw an Okuda out there. I think this defense is going to get better in Detroit, and Okuda is going to be the centerpiece at corner for them. I would look at some of these other guys before I go, that are probably closer to free, where Byron Murphy may or may not, be free at this point. I'd be a little nervous, I would want to see what else they've got around him because I got to think that they bring in somebody to compete with him. You haven't really seen Byron Murphy at his best. I mean, his rookie season, I think, if I remember correctly, was his best season in Arizona, and yeah,
From a fantasy
so
perspective.
I would want to see what they do. Yes, I think stock will be up on Byron Murphy, probably more from an NFL perspective than a fantasy perspective. I would take the wait and see approach, but I tend to take the wait and see approach with corners anyway because not everybody's Mike Hilton. You're going to get a lot of fantasy production from him. Most of the other guys, it can be a bit of a crapshoot. So
Yeah, unless you have like Marlon Humphrey or
yeah,
something, or like Hilton, someone that you
right.
know what you're getting out of, there's no point in paying for a cornerback in most leagues. So
So if you're looking to stash or buy, I mean, for me, when I was looking at corners, it was who can I buy for nothing because corner is such an up and down position. So Craig, who are a couple of corners that you were interested in, or one? I mean, if you only got one. Okay.
yeah, I had two. One of them was a higher draft pick than the other. Jeff Gladney, I think he's sort of in the Murphy situation where he got picked on a lot as a rookie, and fantasy wise, he did great for you. Seems like there's split opinions in Vikings fan or real life land about how much they like him, but I thought he improved a lot for them. But that defense, as far as their defensive line, whether or not Hunter is there, and that secondary, I think are still going to be both messes again. So I think they're going to get passed on a lot, and I like what he did. And another guy that we just saw didn't do a whole lot in the Super Bowl, but in the playoffs and towards the end of the season, L'Jarius Sneed on Kansas City. He did great from the start of the season, got hurt, had to work his way back, and then end of the season playoffs, he showed up and he balled out for him. And he's sort of like the low guy in the totem pole when you look at that secondary, someone that more likely to get picked on than a lot of the other guys they have. So I really like him as someone that you can probably also get for free.
What do you think, Paul?
Paul?
Yeah, I like them. I mean, it's corner. It's who's ever going to be free. You figure it out week 4. Who is just bad enough that they see the field for 100% of snaps, but they also get tackles. And you ride that fine line of being awful, but you also see the field. And frankly, we don't know who that is.
Well, and outside of top couple of guys, which we've mentioned, the Marlon Humphrey, Mike Hiltons of the world, most of these guys really should be next to nothing. Like the two names that I have are on good defenses, but when I looked to see if they were drafted or traded for, these were all free agent pickups. Troy Hill from the Rams and Teron Johnson from Buffalo. Both have a true number one ahead of them, so they're getting picked on a little bit more. They're good enough to see the field regularly. They're getting tackles, a few interceptions here and there, some pass deflections. That's what I target when I go after a guy is who's that kind of number two who you know is going to be on the field, like you said, Paul, and going to get picked on, going to get tackles, things like that. So those are two guys that if they're out on your waiver wire or they're available, I would probably pick them up. Both of those guys, I've checked around all the leagues that I do IDP in. Both of them were picked up after the season at some point. Probably what happened was that somebody was cleaning their roster up and checked the waiver wire, saw those guys were out there and swooped them up. So they weren't available in every league, but each of them were available in at least one spot, and somebody grabbed them. So, Paul, who are your guys, or do you guys have comments?
I'm gonna kind of cheat this one. With Peppers as a free agent, Logan Ryan, while he isn't free, he's got about as solid of a floor as you can ask for, and he is cornerback eligible in just about every spot that I can see, despite him actually playing safety. He's one of the few safeties that I would actually trade for because he's, I don't know, 30, and you have a solid floor. Also, because of that, McKinney is going to see the field if Peppers heads out via free agency, so I'm going to cheat and throw a safety in there, but it seems like it makes sense here to throw him in.
Well, and the nice thing is that you don't see it often in the NFL, but those corners that are truly special can transition. Do that in honor of our Hall of Famer Woodson, can do the transition from corner to safety and do it well. And Logan Ryan, surprisingly enough, is one of those that could do that. He wasn't the best corner, but he did a good job with New England for a lot of years, and then he's kind of transitioned his way into being more of a safety. And I think that's a perfect buy option. And he really shouldn't be expensive, I would guess. At his age, the team he's on, I mean, there's just a lot of things that you could throw into the conversation when you're making that trade that you might be able to get him for super cheap. And it's a perfect transition to safety. Our boy Jason listed his buys, and McKinney was one of his buys. And the other guy on his list is one of my buys, who was actually a guy that you guys loved, which I was a little late to the party on, which I don't own any shares, but I might own a share because I'm working on a trade. Jeremy Chin from Carolina. And then the other one is kind of more of a shot in the dark, but he played well this year for Washington, and I love Washington's defense, and that's Cameron Curl, the safety, who I know Craig's mentioned in the past as a guy that you should try to swoop up, I think, during our show during the season. But those are two guys that I would be interested in acquiring at the right price. The guy I'm talking to really doesn't seem to have much value on Chin. I mean, I'm kind of getting him thrown in on a deal, but I think Chin is a guy that if you can get him at a reasonable price, I would buy him. He played well as a rookie, but I think he's going to get even better than he was because that defense is going to get better. Feel free to comment, Craig, and then throw your safeties in as well.
Curl I had on my list. I don't have a whole lot else to say about him. Yeah, we talked about him, and most leagues you're probably not going to get him for free anymore because he came in at free 99 and proceeded to just ball out for Washington. We'll have to see how that works with Collins because I'm assuming he's going to be healthy and back next year, and with how much they're paying him, he's not moving to the bench. And Chin, I had commented on to Jason in the chat there. I like Chin too, but where I've looked around, his price has just skyrocketed so far that, yeah, if you can get him cheap, go get him. And then the only other word of caution I have with them is how much, when the defense improves, is he going to be continuing to play that safety linebacker hybrid? And is he going to revert to one or the other full-time? And then how does that affect your league position eligibility is the word I was looking for. Because if he ends up just being a linebacker in some leagues, his value is lowered. Whereas if he's getting those stats as a safety, that's why you saw him just ball out in terms of fantasy production at safety this year. So I like him a lot too. And I'm not saying, don't go buy him because of that, but just, keep that in the back of your head and don't go out and pay a complete premium without sort of knowing how it's going to play out.
Paul?
I wouldn't ask, hey, how expensive is Chin? I would ask how expensive is offensive asset X and have him as the throw-in. But everything that Craig said, yeah, I'm behind that 100%. It's just there's no discount anymore.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
on him.
No, unless you're Brad and you're playing in this
Well,
league,
so
apparently.
this conversation
Yeah.
in this league, I started with I pulled a Paul and I started with, hey, I want to buy Denzel Mims because the guy was kind of complaining about him in one of our group chats. So I said, I want to buy Denzel Mims. Let's work a deal out. Throw Chin in is been in the conversation. So that's where the trade is going. So that's kind of where it's at right now. I don't know how much it's going to get up to. We were kind of kicking around, late first, late second, something like that, and I'm like, listen, I'll go as high as the late first if it'll get the deal done, and that's kind of where we're at right now, because he was kind of balking at the second. So, that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, hope he's not watching.
No, he's.
Well, yeah,
I'm about to say,
as he should. I'd want the first and the second.
well, at worst case, I would certainly be okay with it, but that I don't know if that's really going to happen or not. So we'll see. This time of year, I tend to throw out trade offers on guys that I don't know if I could be able to get during season. Now that we're in the off season, some of these leagues, people are just willing to trade to keep doing something. So,
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But Chin, I think all of these guys are IDP guys. Unless you're in a league where everybody's super strong in their IDP knowledge, any IDP player is available. I mean, I traded for Buda Baker at the trade deadline. I was mentioning in one of our conversations. He's probably the top asset in the secondary in fantasy, and I got him as part of a deal. I mean, I don't remember exactly what the deal was now, but I remember asking him to be in it, and he wasn't even the focal point. So, know your league is really what it comes down to. All right, so let's go back. Let's do some D tackles before we end out on the linebackers. So, Paul, who are some D tackles that you have some interest in?
Kinlaw. I didn't actually write one, but Kinlaw. I think they had a poor enough season that you might get him cheap and or free. Like I said, I wouldn't ask, hey, how expensive is he? I would start out at something else and have him as the throw-in. But Kinlaw has A+ upside, and he's pretty free.
And he
depending on how shallow or if it's a
well, and he looks good as a
league.
rookie. They were expecting him to step in for Buckner and fill in, and he looked good. So I definitely like Kinlaw. Craig, how do you feel about him?
Yeah, I mean, Paul and I have our oldest active league is converting to having an interior line position next year, and I drafted Kinlaw, and I don't know if I started him at all this year, but I kept him on my bench all year for that specific reason that we're converting to it, and I know he's a guy long term. I want to see what happens with him, so I'm perfectly fine with that. Paul hasn't sent me an insulting offer for him yet, so that's nice to have the respect shown there, but one might be coming yet this offseason. We'll have to see.
I'm about to say,
or in 5 minutes.
You'll know if he's asking for an offensive player that Kinlaw is going to be in the deal.
Hold on.
Yeah, and a throw and ... No.
So my two guys, because I tried to aim for two at each position, figuring that we would be more than an hour just with us bantering, was the guy that they shipped out. DeForest Buckner still continues to be one of the best interior linemen in fantasy. I know that he's probably not super cheap, but I know he's probably not super expensive either. I would target him because when it comes to the interior side, there's really probably only 5 to 7 really nice defensive tackles. 7 is where my head's sitting at. So you got to get your guy, and Buckner's my guy, so I would buy him even though he may not be the least expensive. And then the other one should be a little less expensive, and that's Jeffrey Simmons from Tennessee. I liked him coming out. I know he was hurt, and they drafted him, in the teens. And you saw some of that ability that he showed in college, and I think it's only going to get better on that defense. And I think you want to get him now before he kind of jumps up into that Buckner type area where he's probably not as cheap as as you'd like him to be. So those are two guys I would love to try to buy. Buckner I own in a couple spots, so I can't buy him, but I would buy him if I could. Craig, what do you think?
I like Buckner a lot. Again, you're sort of playing as close to a premium as you can get for anyone not named Aaron Donald if you're buying Buckner, probably. And Simmons is the other guy that I own in that league that we're switching to for interior
Nice.
lineman. So don't have any complaints about that one either.
Yeah, I mean Simmons
I don't
is really really athletically gifted. I think he's got better athletic profile than a guy like Buckner, and I mean he's just so smooth and such a good athlete. What were you saying, Paul?
Simmons, I don't. The only thing I don't like about Simmons is the horse might be out of the barn on that one. If you have a savvy owner and it's a specific league, he's not free. He's far from it. I think the perceived price on him is higher than what you guys
Could
are
be.
making it out, and that would be my only concern. But that also means that you should at least ask about Simmons, because yes, if you can get him for nothing, yes, 100% behind it. Do it.
So I guess my question to you guys before we move on is, how many leagues are you in where all the owners are just super savvy IDP guys? Because even the leagues we're in together, I'm guessing it's half or less are even remotely savvy. I mean, in positionless, guys are throwing high-end IDPs in on trades, and it's like, do you know who this player is? Are you fairly confident? Do you know what you're doing? Really?
That league's interesting in and
But
of
even
itself.
even XFL,
I mean,
XFL, I don't think they're
it
all
work-
very IDP savvy either.
Depends on the owner. I mean, are they super savvy? No, but are they savvy enough that the waiver wire is not as healthy as it should be? Yes.
Well, then I usually don't see in those leagues where you have the owners that don't, verse themselves as much in IDP that they're as willing to trade, especially if they know that you're someone that knows their stuff on IDP, because there's sort of that second guessing of, all right, well, why do you want this guy? As opposed to, unless they're in love with the trade and you can, sort of hang them out for those last few pieces. Most of them are going to be like, all right, well, if you want that, then I want this back. They're some level of understanding that, all right, well, if you want them, clearly there's something there, so I'm not giving them away. So I think it's, a double-edged sword in that regard. Yeah, I don't know that I'm in a league, a dynasty league, that everyone is completely in love with IDP, but at the same time, most of those teams I'm not getting trades done with. So,
And in the chat, the names that are thrown out are Quinnen Williams and Vita Vey.
Vita Vea's all right, but he just, with that defensive line there, he isn't getting you as much as you'd want, even from a defensive tackle. And Quinnen Williams is sort of like Simmons, where the cat's out of the bag. You're not going to be getting him cheap at this point, I don't think. I mean, if you're outside of Buckner and Donald, he's probably in that next tier of guys that, he's a top 10 defensive tackle asset. How cheap are you going to get him?
Yeah, I
Correct.
think this offseason will change a lot for Tampa. I mean, they're not going to be able to re-sign all these guys. I think Vey will get more involved just because of what's going to leave. I can't, unless Sue takes a discount, which I've never seen him take a discount. He's a guy that kind of likes his money more than Paul. So I think Vita Vey is going to get more time because Sue's snaps are going to disappear when he leaves, and so I think that could be a sneaky buy with potential. And I agree, Williams. Otherwise, I mean, people should know about him because he's pretty. I mean, with Salah, I don't know, Robert from 49ers going there to be their head coach. I expect that defense to take a significant step forward, and he should be at the center of that.
Honestly, one of the guys that I had quickly is the guy next to him, and I'm gonna butcher his name here, I'm sure, but Falaransu Fatukasi, who Randy Johnson had written about on the site. He performed great at the end of this year when he got playing time, and next to Williams getting that attention, he was more than serviceable where he needed interior linemen. If you're looking for a cheap veteran, I had Sheldon Richardson. Again, sort of the pieces around him. Myles Garrett gets all that attention, and Richardson had a nice year. And he's also a free agent after 2021, and he's just old enough. He's going to be looking to try to get another contract, so I don't think he's just going to be dogging it. And then Zach Sealer for the Dolphins. He's sort of a split between the defensive tackle, defensive end. Again, Randy wrote about him on rotoheat.com, but played great for him at the end of that year, and that's an up-and-coming defense. So kind of guys that are more on the free.
And if you want super free, I would keep an eye on whatever Detroit does because I really like their offseason moves. Aaron Glenn is a very under-the-radar defensive coordinator option coming over from the Saints. You know, it's hard because Detroit always sets me up for failure and then just pulls the rug out from under me. But I like what they've done at GM. You know, Dan Campbell's a good rah-rah coach. And then the coordinators, Lynn and Glenn. I mean, I keep an eye on whatever they do at defensive tackle because that guy's going to get playing time because what they have is trash. So
you're not going out looking for Romeo there on defensive ends, Brad? Not falling in love
like
with Romeo.
I would rather his brother, though. I mean, if I'm going to sit on a defensive end long term, I mean, Romeo, I just don't see him lasting much longer in Detroit because he's going to want to get paid because he actually produced last year. Probably the only defensive player that did anything for them. He wants to get paid. I mean, he's going to get one good contract.
All right.
You know what's going to happen here. You're going to have the same thing that Dan Marino did. You're going to have Aaron Glenn be on the other end of a disappointing end. That's a fake spike from '94 reference right there.
Yeah, let's hope not, because Aaron Glenn is a much better corner than that bad decision, for sure. So hopefully he's a better coach. But he was, you know, I've really been impressed so far. So hopefully he's a lot better than that bad play.
In the couple months of no actual playing time for the Detroit Lions, has been impressive.
This offseason's been better than the last 3 years combined, and it's only been
it's a low bar. I know.
They set the bar quite low for us. I mean, you know, when they fired Patricia, everybody was rejoicing like they won the Super Bowl. So I'm pretty sure they set the bar low enough that basically anything's going to get them over it. All right, so we'll finish it out. Linebackers. This should be a fun conversation. There are so many linebackers of value. Paul, who are your buys? Who are a couple guys you're interested in grabbing this year?
I'm going to hit on a couple safeties that I had on the list. Duggar for New England. He's going to see the field, and New England's going to be on the field defensively a lot. Derwin James, he's got an A+ ceiling, and I think there's enough of an injury history that you can get a real discount on him. And Ashton Davis, I think he'll be someone that starts getting some heat in the summer, and with him, it's gonna be like the summer of Sam. I'm sorry, that's the son of Sam. There's your one per show.
A lot of heat.
It's a lot of heat.
Yeah, a lot of heat there.
I actually just lost out on a bid on a, was it Ashton Davis? There was a rookie card on eBay, autographed rookie card on eBay for a couple bucks. I tried to bid on it and it got
Attaboy. I'm getting you.
So I was all about the Ashton Davis. I've been trying to swoop up, get a couple rookies of his because I like him. I'm not sure he's ever a Hall of Fame type player, but you know, maybe something there. But you know, I liked him coming out. Just I wasn't hugely high on him. But now's the time to buy him. If you like him, you got to get him now before he gets pricey.
He's going to see the field a lot. But Isaiah Simmons and Murray would be my two. I don't know how cheap that they're going to end up as, but I think you can at least sell the Isaiah Simmons saw 30-40% of the snaps last year enough and get him maybe at a perceived cheapness there. I also think there's an outside shot that he becomes safety eligible, which if that happens,
that's huge.
Look out. He might be the number one overall safety. I don't think it's likely, but who knows? Murray also, there were instances that he didn't really see the field, and I think you can sell he wasn't good we said back in March, April, May, this might be a throwaway season for a lot of these with COVID and not seeing everyone, having Skype meetings. I want shots on as many of these guys as I can get my hands on, and I will sell basically any selection that's after about 13, 14 overall this next year, unless it's a super flex league. Then you can add like 5 onto that, but I will sell any of those so I can get first round upside at other positions. Now, from a defensive perspective, if you can sell the 3-1 for Isaiah Simmons, excellent. You're probably going to have to be more expensive for Murray just because he saw the field more than Simmons. But, okay, you want my 2-9 for Murray? Excellent. Here you go.
Still value.
So those were my backers that I was interested in.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of both. I think Murray I actually have in a few spots. Simmons I never got shares of. I didn't buy him at his price, but he's definitely a guy because he didn't get as much action as one would have expected. And this is where having the conversation with the guy you're trying to trade with is critical. You can try to talk him, kind of sales pitch him as to why he needs to sell you this asset. Don't be afraid to lowball or talk up the things that are down about a guy. Hey, I mean, like for my linebackers, one of my buys is the best linebacker in football, but it was because he had a down 2020. And he was, I think, like linebacker 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. And you say that, hey, he had a down 2020. That defense is really good. There's a lot of guys getting action. I mean, blah 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 blah. I mean, maybe you get a discount on him, maybe you don't. And I think you should do that in any trade, offensive or defensive. Feel free to talk up the negatives, and I mean, don't go crazy, but at least be reasonable. Craig, what do you think about those players?
Who did you have as your linebacker selection again?
I'll give you them. Let's make sure. Craig, do you have anyone you add on Simmons or Murray? Anything you want to talk about with them?
Going back to Derwin James, quick on the safety part. We got to get our FSU quota talk in here today for Paul, and we haven't hit it yet. We're about a minute short. He does have that A+ upside, but he's got F downside, and that's where I think the discount comes in. If you can get a C cost for him, then I'd love to. But most owners that I've seen are on the, if you have Derwin, you're probably contending or close to it, and you see that upside, and you're not just going to sell them for middle of the road value. So if you can get him, by all means, I love the talent, and I hope he can stay healthy. Just remains to be seen with him. And for the linebackers, yeah, I mean, the only thing with those is, generally speaking, the year after rookie drafts, unless someone's completely soured on the guy, you're going to be buying him from the person who drafted him, and how much of a discount are they going to be interested in giving you, given that they have had him for just a year? Generally not a whole lot unless they've completely crapped the bed, which I don't think either of them did, given the season that we were going into. So I like Simmons more than Murray, but I think that they both are going to have interesting years in terms of sort of that turnover that you're going to be seeing on the Cardinals defense potentially, and then that new scheme, which I'm guessing we're going to get for the Chargers, or you're at least having new coaches there. So how that works out, are we going to continue to see the infuriating constant rotation of linebackers with the Chargers? For our sake, I hope not, and same thing with Murray. I hope for his sake not.
And to finish up the Seminole corner, I did draft Tate Rodemaker in the Debbie draft. More so because
save it for
Thursday. Because I got up on the clock and was like, I don't really love any of the guys on the board that I have kind of sitting here, and Paul kept in the back of the mind, draft Rodemaker and be happy about it. I'm like, I'll take Rodemaker and see what happens about it.
And it's now Thursday, everyone. If you wanted that defensive talk, nope, you're getting Devy talk.
We're only in round
deep super flex,
and it's
Devy
super
talk.
deep. I mean, insane. This league is insane.
hundreds of players.
Okay, so my linebackers are Darius Leonard, who finished as linebacker like 7 or 8, if I remember correctly, overall. And then Eric Wilson from the Vikings. He's a little bit older. I think he's 26, but they seem to like him, and he definitely produced well in that defense. And with the continued transition they're making as a team, I think he still has another couple years of getting used heavily because they have so many other spots they need to fix. So he's a guy that you should get for free. Like if he costs anything, and I'd be surprised, but he finished in the top 10, I believe, if I remember correctly. So those would be two guys I would target if you're looking for one, an expensive linebacker you might be able to get reasonably discounted because you can try to throw at how good that defense is and blah, 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 blah. And then Eric Wilson, if you're looking for something free that could be a good hit, I go after him. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll get behind everything you said. As someone who owns Leonard, the price is heckin' no. He's just not available. If you get him as a nice throw-in for something else, excellent. I would rather head the free route for defense, but yeah, he's awesome. He's probably if you want to argue White's ahead of him,
I
think that's a recency thing. Yeah, so do I. But you're splitting hairs even between those two. Wilson, I don't think they re-sign everyone, and they have salary issues, and they're all old. So I think they're going to draft someone 3rd, 4th, or 5th round that's going to see the field a lot next year, and maybe it's Wilson, maybe it's the guy they pick up. Who knows? I don't know Kendricks' situation off my head. Is he a free agent? I don't know. It's early in the process. I don't immerse myself in it because all of a sudden you see, okay, this re-signed or they traded him, and you drive yourself nuts. I just don't get involved in that, but if he hits, awesome. If not,
right.
He was free.
Well, and plus this time of year, doing a buy show this time of year is fun to kind of project, but it's rookie season. We're deep into the thick of evaluating guys, going back through for a second time and evaluating guys, digging up guys that should have been evaluated the first time but just didn't get on the list. It's hot and heavy rookie season. Buying guys is kind of a crapshoot at this point unless it's the top tier guys that are going to be valuable. I don't knock a person for not digging in and getting deep into it. That's what you come to us for. We get in deep and we figure it out for you. Craig, what's your take?
Kendricks has like a $9 million cap hit for this year, so he's probably sticking around. And with Wilson being a free agent, and they had drafted a guy like Troy Dye last year who didn't see the field a lot this year, they'd probably give someone like that a chance, like Paul said, or a rookie over re-signing Wilson. Wilson got a little over $3 million this year, and after the season he had, he's probably getting quite a bit more on the open market if he goes. So I think Paul's right. It's unlikely that he's back in Minnesota. And then it's sort of like we talked about with Arizona, with Reddick. Where he goes matters. You can't just throw every player into any system, any team, and have him produce. So where he goes will matter for that.
We were sitting here and we were basically almost all behind the DeAndre Campbell, and then he signs for just cash, and we're sitting here going, what do we, I want to see the situation first, and then I'll react after. And I know that's a cop-out, but there's just so many things you can't see that after the fact become obvious. I'll evaluate it after the fact. Talent first, situation second. I'll figure it out later, and from a defensive side, it kind of sucks because you want the guys who don't have talent but have situation. It's frustrating. I get why why it's not for everybody.
Yep. All right, Craig, round us out. Who are your linebackers?
Well, we did have one question here. Someone asked about Quan Alexander being back in form in New Orleans. If the guy could ever stay healthy, maybe, but he had another, I think, season-ending injury, another significant one. Man, if you're literally taking him off the free pile and stashing him, sure, he has the talent, but his health just has not been there for him, and I'm not paying anything for him. So,
Yep.
um, the two guys that I had listed here, again, more so on the El Cheapo side of it, and you do run the risk, like Paul said, of them being um, overtaken by someone drafted or a free agent. But Alex Singleton did great for Philadelphia this year. He wasn't the guy we were talking about taking over. There were a whole bunch of names: Davion Taylor, Nate Jerry. We went down the line, but Singleton, second half of the year, just balled out for him. So I think they're going to keep him around at least, and he is someone that's generally free in leagues, so he's worth a shot. And then the other one, he isn't free anymore. He was for a while, even at the start of this last year. Foy Oluwakan for Atlanta, second linebacker next to Jones. He balled out this year. A lot of people were talking him up preseason. He started off a little slow. He's not going to be free anymore, but he is cheaper than someone like Deion Jones still, who has that name attached to him, where most people probably can't say Foy's name, like I kind of couldn't there. So got to get it to be muscle memory with some of these guys, and I'm not there, and some people just never will. So, he's a name that I don't see talked up a lot outside of the fantasy community. So, like Brad said, some of those less savvy IDP owners, you can probably get someone like him thrown in who's probably going to be a LB2 for you.
Yeah, I mean, both of those situations, I want to see. I like the players. I want to see what the team does. Both of them are going through major transition, and I think the Eagles.
Yep.
I think Singleton would have an opportunity to stick around and keep playing just because that's a crapshoot of a team right now. I mean, they just hired a new head coach who I think is probably the worst of the head coaching hires this round. I don't really feel confident about that team as a whole. So Singleton should see plenty of field time. So that should be a nice buy because they're going to be playing a lot of defense because that offense is going to be trash. You hear them talking about trading Wentz and Hurts is whatever. I mean, I just that team is just, and from Atlanta side of things, they're another team that's going to be going through transition, but they have so much money invested on the offense that I think he sticks around at linebacker just because they needed cheap linebackers and cheap defense to cover for the fact that they're spending all of their money on like 5 or 6 players. So I think they're both great buys, but I would throw the caveat on there. You have to keep an eye on what these teams are going to do, what kind of schemes they're going to run. Atlanta's defensive scheme 2020 is different than kind of what Tennessee did. So if Arthur Smith brings over something that's pseudo like Tennessee, I don't know what that would do to him. Same with Philly. I mean, if things look different, Jim Schwartz is retiring, all these other moving pieces. Just things to keep in mind as the offseason goes on, but those are definitely guys that you should get for fairly cheap, if not free. Paul?
As I was looked up, Craig actually owns Taylor in the positionless league, and we might have to work something out after this gets over because I think he's the guy. I guess, would you rather have someone who's not the most athletic or someone with a super high ceiling that by week 6 if he doesn't see the field? J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Ouch. Taylor fits that mold. I'd rather have him for nothing and shoot for the upside.
Fair enough. I mean, that's what most of these, sort of situations we talked about a year ago-ish. Like Cleveland was another one. What's going to happen with that mess there? And it really did end up being a mess. I mean, I think the top guy was B.J. Goodson, who was a cast-off from the Giants or
Played
something
Green
like
Bay,
that. And
yeah.
no one saw that coming.
Yeah,
So
Cincinnati was the same way.
yeah, you're going to have a few teams each year. This year, off the top of our head there, you had the Bengals, you had the Browns, and the Eagles. And every year, you're going to have a few of those where it's going to be a stay away. But like Paul said, if you can identify your guy or the guy you think will be the guy down the road, it's easier to get those guys cheap
Absolutely.
then.
All right, folks, that's it. That's the buy show. We're done. It's out. So we thank you guys for coming back and joining us as we're starting a new season, a new year. Off seasons, hot and heavy. You know, I would continue to remind you guys to keep it locked in here to whether it's YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching it. Keep it locked in. We're going to be getting back to streaming. But also, we've got all of our rookie videos. I'm working tirelessly to try to record as many videos as possible, as our evaluators are working very hard to evaluate all the offensive and defensive guys. We're working extremely hard. RookieDraftGuide.com is where you want to go. Become a patron because then you can see everything, not just some of it. You get the whole thing. So we appreciate everything you guys do. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, asking questions, being in the chats, commenting, liking, subscribing, doing all those things. Join us every week. Every Monday we'll be back. We're going to start spinning up some of these streams and getting back to some of the off season as we have in the past. Our Devy show will be back Thursday nights. We're going to start talking. It's actually going to be more rookie focused instead of Devy, but we'll get back to Devy stuff as rookie season winds down. Craig, thank you as always. Paul, always a pleasure.